Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. This is Chris Lights Out Lytle, and this is our journey to document the history of mixed martial arts. I have brought with me my friend, the MMA detective Mike Davis, and together we will preserve the history and hear some great stories from the world in the era of the no-holds-barred. Thank you and enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have I think this is your fourth or fifth appearance here, Jeremy Horn.
I should have my name on the door, right?
You should. When you look at the totality of mixed martial arts, there's certain peaks and valleys that take place. And the Miletich Fighting System, in my opinion, in regards to teams, particularly coming from the United States, it's hard to argue a team that is more accomplished than Miletich Fighting Systems. And you primarily were the architect behind the majority of their championship runs. So Jeremy Horn, welcome back to the podcast, dude.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
So let's start with, when do you switch to the Miletich Fighting Systems? Do you recall, like, roughly what year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I trained in Omaha. I think I had maybe 6 or 7 fights. It was right around or just after my fight with Ebenezer Braga in Brazil. That was my second fight in the UFC. So I moved to Iowa in December of 1998.
Dude, Ebenezer Braga is living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Is he really?
Dude, he's a preacher. He's got
no kidding.
He's got his own church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
I knew he's one of those guys that looked like an absolute psychopath, just like physically the way he looked, kind of drawn out features and face, and did not look like a friendly guy. But everything I've ever heard about him has said he's just such a friendly guy. Nice, solid fighter, savage of a fighter, but just a nice guy. And so I guess it really doesn't surprise me that much that he became a preacher.
Yeah, he baptized a lot of the United States fighters. Brandon Lee Hinkle, like, if you look at his record, like, he fought like the tough, gritty Americans, not like the super skilled jiu-jitsu. He fought the tough, gritty guys.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, so you start Miletich Fighting, you transfer, you go with Pat Miletich. What was the reason for you moving there?
Well, so when I started, my let's see, what's the word I want to look for? My transition into MMA training and fighting was kind of slow. I was training in a gym in Omaha with my brother and a few friends, and we were sort of following the mold of what we thought MMA was, just a mix of striking and grappling and wrestling and just kind of doing it. We didn't really know what we were doing, just get together and beat each other up for a couple hours. And then in my second and third fight, I fought in a tournament for Monte Cox. I believe
Extreme Challenge.
Well, it was that show, but he didn't call it Extreme Challenge yet. I believe it was the
Iowa Challenge.
The Ultimate, I think, is what he called it. Yeah, old school. So before he started the Extreme Challenge, and so Pat and Mark Hansen actually was a training partner of Pat's, and that's who I fought in the finals. So I met Pat and Monty and Mark and all those guys. And back then, everybody would go to the fight, and then after the fight, everybody would go to the bar and hang out and get to know each other. And we actually all ended up going to Pat's gym the next day and training together. So I just got to know the guys real well, and then I realized that they had a bit of a head start on me in what I needed to do to train for a fight. Like, this is how you should train, and this is what your schedule should be, and this is how you can segment your training. Like, we would just get together when I was training with my buddies in Omaha, and we just beat each other up. And Pat was like, no. Like, let's do 3 or 4 rounds of pad work, and then let's do some sparring, and then let's drill a little bit of technique on the ground, and then let's roll a little bit. And I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of what training means. Not just for an hour, we're just going to kick the hell out of each other, So I started going to Pat's about twice a month. It was about 4-hour drive from Omaha to the Quad Cities. So, and Pat would just let me stay with him. So I'd drive out there on Fridays, stay and train Saturday, Sunday, and drive home Sunday night. And after a couple of years of that, I decided I just wanted to move out there full time. So in December of 98, I just moved out there full time and then started training with him full time.
So this is a point, I mean, this is Jeremy's big career move. Like, everybody at this point in your life, they're going to, hey, dude, go work for the union, fireman, policeman, doctor, all that stuff. You've decided to transition to a job that doesn't really pay yet.
Yes. So that was a bit of an anomaly. So, my entire pathway, my journey through MMA has been really strange. And it's not even something that could be duplicated today, because in the early days of the sport, things were different, So I was working a job in Omaha, and I figured, well, I'll move to Iowa and I'll pick up a job and I'll keep fighting, because I didn't really think of fighting as a career. It was fun to do and I wanted to be good at it. And back then, I had already fought Frank Shamrock in the UFC at that point, and I got paid $2,500 for that fight. So I mean, I fought for a world title for $2,500. But I didn't expect this to be anything big. It was a new sport that I loved to do, and the competition was awesome, and I wanted to get good at it. So I thought, screw it, I'm going to go to Iowa and I'm going to train and I'm going to get good. But I always intended that I would go to Iowa and I would pick up a job and I'd work a regular job and I would just train and fight on the weekends and have fun. And then when I moved to Iowa, that was kind of when everything was kind of exploding. Everybody was promoting fights. Everybody and their brother either wanted to fight or was promoting fights, or it was everywhere. And so Travis Fulton, the infamous Travis Fulton, was in the area at that time as well. And this is back before he became a shitbag. And he was fighting everywhere all the time. And I go, look, dude, I want to fight as much as I can. Anytime you go to a fight, talk to the promoter, find me a fight. I want to go with you every time. And he's like, are you serious? I go, yes, every single fight you can get me, find me a fight. So in 1999, I had like 35 fights. I fought almost every weekend, sometimes tournaments, sometimes a Friday night, and then drive to a fight on Saturday and fight again. So it's not that I intended to become a professional fighter, but I just didn't need a job. I'm fighting every weekend. I'm making $500-600 a fight. Back then, $2,000 a month was enough to pay my bills. So I guess I'm now a full-time fighter.
So it's wild. Wild.
But it was just so gradual. I never said, okay, this is a big leap for me. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go all in as a fighter. And this is going to be scary because I don't know if I can pay my bills. I moved to Iowa and I was like, yeah, I'll pick up a job, sooner or later. After the fight this weekend, I'll get a job on Monday. Oh, I got another fight this weekend. I guess I'll wait till next week. And it just rolled on that way. I never ended up getting a job again.
So I was told, like, way back in the day, that you were going to be working in the medical field at some point, like nursing or some type of job like that.
No, I was doing construction and stuff. I was doing like basically maintenance and construction at a Holiday Inn chain in Omaha. I never did any kind of nursing or anything.
So recently I acquired a whole bunch of B-roll from Dojo TV. And those guys followed you around, especially like around 98, 97, probably like 98. And the camaraderie between Matt Hughes and Pat Miletich, like wherever you saw Pat, you saw Matt Hughes.
Yeah.
Like it was like Matt emulated Pat and wanted to do everything he could to be Pat.
Yeah, definitely.
I never really it never equated to me until I saw the video footage.
Well, I think a lot of times when you have an athlete, especially like a coached athlete, a sports athlete, they gravitate towards a coach figure, and Pat was certainly a coach. Pat never, I don't think he intended to be the head of a gym. He was training to fight himself. And then I moved to Iowa and I'm like, hey, Pat, you're really good. Can I come train with you? He's like, sure, I'd love more training partners. And then more and more people are like, hey, those guys in Iowa are good. I'm going to go train with them. And it all just happened to be Pat's gym. And now we're all looking at him going, Pat, you're our leader. What do we do? And Pat's like, I don't know. I'm just training to fight, man. I'm doing my own thing. And so we're like, okay, well, we'll just follow you. Whatever you do, we're going to do. And so it wasn't really like Pat was like planting his flag going, okay, this is the Miletich gym. You guys are my stable of fighters and you will follow my coaching. It was more like Pat Miletich, the fighter, going, hey, I want to train. Who wants to come train with me? And we're like, yep, I do. I want to come train. So let's all go train.
Okay. So when you look at teams in MMA, Shoot Box, Team Quest, Lions Den, American Top Team, like there's some standout gyms that have won a lot of hardware. You guys are at the top of that list. And you're saying it kind of just came together organically, almost accidentally.
Yeah, kind of.
At what point do you realize that what you guys are doing is special?
You know, I don't know about the other guys, but for me personally, again, just because I've got such a strange view of fighting and my own career, it never really struck me as anything that special or that out of the ordinary. I know looking from the outside, it was, it was a gym full of killers that were just stomping everybody they fought for the most part. But for me, I was just a kid that was doing karate with his buddies and having fun. And on the weekends, I'd go fight, and I was making enough money to not need a job. So I basically just got to play all day with my friends, just go train and have fun with my buddies all day long. And so it was fun, certainly. And I guess if I step back and looked at it, I'd say, hey, I'm living a fortunate life. This is pretty cool for me. But I never really would have stepped back and looked at it and said, holy cow, I'm part of the best team of fighters in the world, and we are kings. I was just like, hey, these are just my buddies. I just go, I go see Spencer and Tim and Matt and Robbie, and we just go train together. It's just my buddies. It never clicked that way to me. I don't know.
Did it click? I'm assuming it clicked afterward.
Not really.
What the fuck?
I mean, so again, because I've got a bit of a different view as far as fighting goes, and how people should view fighters. Like, I don't think I'm anybody special.
Well,
I don't think I don't.
Here we go. All right. You don't think you're anybody special? That's a good segue. March 13th, 1998. It's the first time I saw you in the corner. It's UFC 16. It's a four-man tournament. It's a 8-man tournament, I believe. Pat Miletich fought Townsend Sanders. Then he beat Chris Brennan, and he was supposed to fight Mikey Burnett in the finals, but Burnett got injured. So you're actually in the corner of Pat Miletich.
Yeah.
They give him the belt, obviously. So it's the inaugural 170-pound title fight.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it was just like the UFC was not real as big as it was now. Then it was just a fight promotion. It wasn't that special.
I mean, did you look at it like it's the hook and shoot title, or did you have a little more?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it was bigger than that, but it wasn't like this is the premier organization in the world that everybody is seeking the title in. It was just, it's a fight promotion. Here's a belt. You're fighting tough guys. I've just always viewed it that way.
Well, if you look at it historically, like John Peretti's the matchmaker, and John Peretti is absolutely the reason the term modern MMA has established itself. So, like, this is under John Peretti. So, the people in it were tough as shit. Like Townsend Saunders.
Oh, yeah.
1996 silver medalist in the Olympics. Chris Brennan, obviously, was a pretty notorious name. And Mikey Burnett, somebody that everybody respected, coming from the Lions Den. So, like, it's a tournament full of killers. Did you help Pat game plan, or was it just one of those meet me in the UFC at this point?
There really was no game plan. It was go train as hard as you can, be as good as you can at everything, and you're going to have to go fight. Like, there was no database back then. There was
VHS tapes. Yeah.
It was like, look, you're fighting an Olympic wrestler. He's going to be a good wrestler. His boxing's probably not good. He's probably not good at submissions. He's going to take you down, but you're going to try to stop him, right? Just be as well-rounded as you can and try to prepare for everybody, Fighting Chris Brennan, we're like, that was actually Chris and Pat's, I think, third fight.
Third with Pat.
UFC. So we kind of knew who Brennan was. We're like, look, this guy's a tough jiu-jitsu guy. He's a scrappy guy, but not much wrestling and not great at striking. So we kind of knew what was coming, but still, it was never like, okay, this guy's no good at this, so we're going to try to tailor the fight to go this way. It was just, look, be good at everything, and being like, we have always kind of looked at it like this. There's 4 components that you need to be a good fighter: wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, some sort of thing, jiu-jitsu, and conditioning. There's 4 elements to the fight. Be as good as you can at all of them, and then just go fight wherever the fight takes you.
Okay.
I happen to be more prone to grappling. Great. Pat was good at everything, but he kind of liked to strike. Matt Hughes clearly had a wrestling background, and he really wanted to take people down and pound on him. But we all trained in everything equally, but some people just gravitated more towards one than the other,
So UFC 17, your title fight against Frank Shamrock was May 15th, 1998.
Yeah.
So you say not a big deal, not a big deal. Now it's your turn. Was there a little extra pressure in regards to it?
No, say again, because I've just had such a odd pathway. So I am training with Pat. I'm staying at his house. I hadn't moved out there yet. And
they said that you had moved out there for this fight.
well, I went out there for like a month. I stayed with Pat for a while. I didn't officially, didn't move out there yet. And so what happened was, do you remember they called it the Night of Champions that ended up coming out later? Do you remember the backstory of all that?
Go ahead, remind me.
Well, so what they did was they put out this video or this event, the UFC did, that they called the Night of Champions.
Okay.
And it was a pay-per-view event, and all they were going to do was replay the title fights from their, Hoist winning 1, Hoist winning number 2, Hoist winning number 3, Severn win or whoever win, they were just going to replay like the title fights, and they were going to call it the Night of Champions. But they realized that they would never be able to sell this as a pay-per-view just playing all old fights. So they had to spice up and say, okay, we're going to add one new fight. We're going to add one live fight. It wasn't live, but we're going to add one new fight. That fight was me and Frank. So we actually fought on UFC 17. We were the first fight of the night. We fought in a dark match, they called, before the pay-per-view started. So, because they wanted to film it so they could save the film to add it to this Night of Champions thing that they did later. So the same night that Dan Henderson won the 4-man tournament, I fought Frank Shamrock. So, backing up a little bit, I'm in Iowa training with Pat, and I think I was scheduled to be an alternate on that card. I was supposed to fight Chuck Liddell. And they decided they're going to swap this around. They're like, look, we got to have a title fight. We're going to add Frank Shamrock. Who do we want to fight? They decided to pick me. John Peretti calls me and he says, hey, we're going to change your fight up. You're not fighting Chuck Liddell anymore. You're going to fight Frank Shamrock for the title. And I remember going, okay, that's cool. Fine. And he got a little bothered by that. He was like, what do you mean fine?
Well, dude, John, he's such a unique personality.
He is, yeah. But
He really
he said
is.
that, and I'm like, okay, like I'll fight whoever you tell me to, okay. And he's like, what do you mean, okay? The proper response is thank you for this title shot. And I was like, oh, okay. Thanks for the title shot. Like I didn't really care. I didn't really think about it. I didn't know. I just didn't understand the magnitude of what it was. I'm like, okay, I'm going to fight somebody else now. I'm going to fight Frank Shamrock, whatever, and then going into the fight, his last 2 fights before me were Igor Zinoviev and Kevin Jackson, and he beat both of them in 30 seconds.
That John Lober loss, changed him.
Yeah. But yeah, so I go into this fight and I'm like, well, he just fought those 2 absolute monsters and he beat them both in 30 seconds. And I thought, man, I'm not going to win this fight, but I know he can't beat me in 30 seconds. I'm like, I don't care what else happens. I'll curl up in a ball and start flailing. He can't beat me in 30 seconds. I knew that. And so there's really no pressure because I knew they were bringing me in to lose. They're bringing, I'm some nobody from the Midwest, and I'm being brought in to fight the champion after he just beat 2 guys like that. Like, they don't think I'm going to win. I knew that. I'm not stupid. But I'm like, whatever. There's no pressure on me. He can't beat me in a minute. I guarantee that. But he'll beat me eventually.
Oh.
So, but there's no pressure. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. You guys, you want me to be a sacrificial lamb? Cool. I don't care. You're going to pay me $2,500. That's more money than I've ever made in my life fighting.
I'm rich.
Yeah, I'm rich, bitch. So, but then I go in there and he tries to kick me and I pick him up and throw him on his head. And I move to the mount and I'm like, okay. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, he didn't expect that. But any minute, it's Frank Shamrock and he's going to put it in gear and he's going to beat me. And then he tried an arm lock and I passed his guard and mount him again. I'm like, all right. I caught him off guard that time, but any minute, Frank Shamrock's going to kick it into gear and he's going to beat me. Fast forward 15 minutes, I'm like, all right, this guy is trying and he can't beat me. He's not good enough. I'm like, holy shit, I'm better than this guy. I can beat him. But the whole fight, I was just in my head so much because I was like, look, I can't beat this guy. Holy cow, how am I mounted on Frank Shamrock? Okay, that was lucky. He didn't see that coming. But the next thing he does is going to beat me. And then I squirm out of that and get back to the mount. I'm like, all right. You remember watching the fight, right? I'm like,
Oh,
I'm
dude,
mounted on him,
I
but I'm
was
just like
screaming for you.
pancaked out. I'm like looking around like, what the hell's going on? It's the only fight McCarthy said where he had to stand somebody up and reset him from the mount because I wasn't doing anything. I was just in such shock that I was mounted on Frank Shamrock.
Well, I'm going to tell you where that comes from. Frank comes from the pancrase like system. And because there's no striking or elbows to the head, with a closed fist, I've watched thousands of hours of pancrase. They have no problem giving up.
Yeah,
they
don't value the positions the same because they're not the same. Yeah. So then finally we go into that second overtime, and finally I'm like, all right, I'm gonna beat this guy. I'm better than him. I can do it now. And I just got a little a little too aggressive on that takedown, a little sloppy on that takedown. He got a hold of my leg. So,
is what it is.
Exactly. It is. So there was no pressure going into the fight because I didn't expect to win.
Wait. You were in Pat Miletich's corner when he fought Mikey Burnett too, though. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So you're also cornering somebody in a title fight that same night.
I don't know if that was the same night.
Well, like you said, it was a dark match. Okay.
Right.
That throws me off. I remember the pay-per-view Night of Champions. I mean, at the time, it was like the little tubes on the back of the box so you could kind of unscramble the pay-per-views. I definitely had that going on at that point. But Mikey Burnett, I'm almost positive you were in his corner that night as well. Well, yes, maybe that night.
See.
I think that's the same day that you and Pat had to go into Vitor Belfort's locker room to calm him down.
So that was actually the one before. So he fought Chris Brennan and Townsend Saunders on UFC 16. That was they called it the Battle in the Bayou. That was the 4-man tournament when he fought them. That's when Frank Shamrock fought Zinoviev.
Well, it was an 8-man tournament because Burnett pulled off and it screwed the finals
up. Let's see.
I watched the event. I know my notes.
Yes.
I had the occasional mistakes.
It was a 4-man tournament. Mikey Burnett fought Eugenio Taddeo, I think is his name.
Yeah.
And he was too exhausted to go into the finals. And Brennan was an alternate and ended up moving into the finals against Penn.
So it was a 4-man. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. Eugenio Taddeo, that's another guy. Him and Ebenezer Braga.
Yep.
Dude, those are two of my favorite old school Brazilians.
Yep. So, yeah. So then the next show, I end up fighting Frank and.
Well, here, let's talk about Vitor Belfort. You and Pat were summoned to the locker room in order to give him a pep talk.
I don't remember much of that. I think Pat might have done that more on his own because I don't really remember that.
Okay. And then Pat fought Mikey Burnett, won by split decision. Afterward, he called Romino Sato. Dude, that would have been a fight I would have loved to have seen.
Yeah, that would have been a good one.
And then when he fought Macaco, you were not there. UFC 18. I did not see you in the audience.
Yeah, let me see. I got the pulled up on the side here. Let me see.
That's January 8th of 1999. So that's right around the time you moved to Miletich.
What was I doing? Let's see. That was January 8th, 99.
You're looking at your record?
Yeah.
You're probably fighting somebody.
Oh, I was fighting. I was up in Canada fighting. I fought on January 9th, 99.
Okay.
I fought in the IFC up in Montreal.
Did you get paid for that?
Yes.
Yeah, a couple guys. It was always a little negotiating in Canada.
Yeah, I struggled with that because they wrote me a check and they actually wrote it really sloppy and my bank wouldn't cash it. So I had to call them and I was fighting with them to send me another check and just, yeah.
So John Dixon had the exact same story. They're like, yeah, they promised me this much, but then it turns out
that doesn't surprise me a bit.
It was Canadian. It's like you cut it in half.
Yeah.
And UFC 21 was in Iowa, July 16th, 1999. Pat Miletich against Andre Pederneiras. Pederneiras, an outstanding jiu-jitsu player. Pat wins by cut in the second round. Nova União founder.
Yes.
He also beat Rumino Sato. Dude, he beat Rumino Sato when Rumino Sato was like #1 in the world.
Yeah, that was such a crazy fight, right? If I remember
Yeah.
correctly, he just kind of shut him down from Sato's guard and then just caught him with some hard shots and put him to sleep, didn't he?
My notes say that you guys were traveling to Montreal for training. Is there any truth to that?
We're training where?
In Montreal?
Well, we were fighting for the TKO organization up there. Do you remember
Yeah.
Stefan
Stefan
Patry, I
Patrick.
think was his name?
Yeah. Stefan Patrick. Yeah.
Yep. So we would go up there from time to time. And, I always thought I would like to go up early. So if I was going to fight somewhere and I could, I'd go up a couple of weeks early for bigger fights like that if I could. So maybe that's what it was, but didn't train up there too often.
And you know the crazy thing that people like have issues even wrapping their heads around? At this time, Pat Miletich is the UFC champ. He fights Shawnee Carter at Extreme Challenge 27.
Yep.
Then he fights Paley Landy at WEF January 16th, loses that fight. And then right around that time, Mark Coleman decides to get in shape for the Grand Prix, the March 1st, 2000 Grand Prix. He decides to do a camp with you guys.
Yeah. He came out and trained with us in Iowa for a month or so, maybe more. Yep.
Dude, it's one of the greatest moments in mixed martial arts, that Grand Prix title.
Yeah.
You're in Mark Coleman's corner then.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a weird one. So I cornered him when he fought Alan Goes, just for the first round of that, I think, because then Pat was with him for when he went back for like the next section of the tournament. But so Mark had myself and Gary Goodridge in the corner, and I've always been, I try to be very analytical and very intellectual about how I process fights. So, I want a calm mind. I want a warmed up, energized body. I want you focused, and I want you thinking about, the strategies. I want you kind of playing out scenarios in your head, how your opponent can attack you. And so backstage, Mark is warming up, and I can see, Mark is Mark.
He's got foot on the gas.
Yeah, he's insane. He's fired up. He's jumping up and down. He's just raging out of control as his warm up. And Gertrude is there, is encouraging him, like, getting him fired up, getting him really revved up. And I'm like, Mark, calm down, think, strategize. And Mark was kind of getting frustrated because, on one hand, it's Gary giving him a pep talk, trying to get him to kick his way through the wall. And I'm on the other side calming him down. And Mark's like, God damn it, you guys stop it. He's telling me to go more. You're telling me to calm down. Like, what, he was getting kind of frustrated. And I can certainly see how that'll do it.
The recent events with the fire and Mark rescuing his parents, it's allowed people to kind of understand who he is and what he's done. But up until this point, he was great, like largely underappreciated, like as a personality and a fighter.
Yep. It's really weird. I mean, I've gotten a chance to see obviously a lot of people and see them other than what their on-screen persona is. And Mark is a guy that I think you're right. I mean, he's very, I don't know if misunderstood is the right word, but Mark is a really nice guy. You see him in the cage, you see him doing interviews. He kind of comes off as a hothead. He almost comes off like an asshole because he's an aggressive, energetic fighter. And sometimes that comes out as kind of negativity, but he's not. He's such a nice guy. When he was coming and training with us in Iowa, it's a great guy.
Where I think was, I know Mark, like I know Mark like really well. And where I think he struggles, it's when the camera's on.
Sure.
Like you want him to go lift up a truck off of somebody to save their life. Dude, that's your first pick. You got Coleman. He can do it. Yep. You want to do an interview with him, all of a sudden it's like he's got anxiety. And he's not a dumb guy. Like Mark Coleman is not a dumb person. Like he's
right.
Phenomenal with stories. He's on point. I just think it's when the camera's on and talking is where he's got that disconnect where he might not actually be able to show the true person that he is. I think with time, his age has helped him with that, but certainly when he was younger, it was not to his benefit.
Yeah, I agree 100%. He's an athlete, he's a competitor, and when that switch gets flipped, he doesn't think clearly, and he doesn't, so yeah, his real self doesn't come out until he can kind of step back from the line.
And Miletich is, like you said, at this point they're recruiting. It's people going, yeah, I want to go there. Yeah, I want to work out there. Pat Miletich fights John Alessio, UFC 26. Eddie Millis, wait, 20 years younger fighter. Amaury Bitetti showed Pat Miletich the armbar that he used to win that fight.
Yes. So yeah, Amaury and Arturo Mariano. Remember that name?
Yeah.
He beat Vanderlei Silva down in Brazil before Vanderlei was
Vanderlei. Yeah.
It's back when it was Vanderlei with a W. he went by Vanderlei da Silva before he became Wanderlei Silva. But yeah, so Arturo Mariano and I'm drawing a blank already. I came up and trained with us. Yeah.
Yeah, Bitetti. Okay.
Yeah, Bitetti, Amaury Bitetti. Yeah.
How was
I got to
Bitett's
train with them
English?
for like a month.
How was Bitett's English?
Not very good. He could communicate enough to get points across, but not conversational.
If you look at his fight with Don Frye, it's Hall of Fame. It's Hall of Fame worthy. Like you couldn't. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Like I think Bitetti would have handed Royce his lunch.
Oh, I think so too. I remember hearing at the time when Amaury was fighting in the UFC, because that was, if I remember correctly, that was that 8 or 9 UFC, number 8, number 9, something like that.
You talking about Frye? I think 9 from memory. 9. Yeah.
So my brother fought on that same card. Matt Anderson fought Rafael Carino on that card. Matt's my brother. And so I remember hearing about the card, and I remember hearing about this guy, Amaury Bitetti was fighting, and everybody was like, everybody knew the Gracie stories then, but now we're starting to hear about other Brazilians that are also good, and we're like, oh my God, we hear this guy's as good as Hickson, Don Frye doesn't stand a chance. This guy's a killer, he's a jiu-jitsu world champion, and, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, that was the story is he's going to just destroy Don Frye.
Dude, Carlson was so, like, he was literally saying, this is the next world champion. This is the next world champion. And he very well may have been,
right,
had he fought in the proper weight class.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, Don Frye was what, 215 in that fight?
Yeah, 215, 220. And what's he about?
Amaury probably could have made 170. He's, under 200, probably maybe 190,
It's a phenomenal fight, dude. It's just like you learned a lot about Amaury in that fight, but what kind of nail he is.
Yeah.
Jens Pulver. All right. So the UFC wants to establish a 155-pound title. November 17, 2000, UFC 28. Jens Pulver knocks out John Lewis.
Yep.
Do you remember when Pulver's first day over at MFS?
I don't remember the first day. I remember a couple of the early days because he came out. If I remember correctly, he like rode a bus or a train or something all the way out from his home on the East Coast or West Coast, excuse me. I want to say he's from
Washington.
Seattle, Washington.
Area, yeah.
So he rides a bus or a train or something, comes all the way out there, and this was right before he fought Phil Johns in the WEF. So he kind of came out, and I don't think he was out in Iowa very long. It feels like it was just a couple of weeks. Maybe it was longer than that, but it wasn't a very long time. And so he comes out. We were just getting to know him. I don't even think we really trained together that much yet. And then he ends up fighting Phil Johns, knocks him out real quick, and then this kind of a fusing miscommunication. So it's me and Pat and Mark Hansen and a handful of other guys that are all down there because Pat fought on that card, and so did I. I think that's when he fought. I think it's when he fought Pele. Then I fought Nogueira, I think.
WEF, yeah.
And so, we corner Jens for the fight. He wins. We're still, kind of getting to know each other. But then the next day, all the Iowa guys are loading up in the van and we're getting ready to head back to the airport. And Jens calls. And he didn't say, hi, this is Jens. He just said, hey guys, can I catch a ride with you back to the airport? And I'm not sure who it was, but us collectively were like, no, sorry, dude, no room. We didn't know it was him. We thought it was
Yeah.
just some random guy asking for a ride to the airport. We're like, sorry, we don't have room. So we're all piling into the van and we're driving across the parking lot. There we see Jens with his bag walking across the parking lot. And we're waving. We're like, hey, Jens. And he flips us off. He's like, fuck you guys. And we're like, what? He goes, you guys tell me I'm good enough to win a fight for you and represent your team, but I can't even get a ride to the airport with you guys. Go fuck yourselves. He was ready to go home. He was pissed. He was like, I can come all the way out to Iowa. These guys will back me and corner me and make their gym look good. And we're like, holy shit, Jens, we had no idea that was you that called. Of course, get in the van. But yeah, he was gonna go back to Iowa and turn around and go home. And he'd only been in Iowa for like a week.
He's that type of personality where you still got to
Yep.
calm him down afterward.
Yep. He's like, screw you guys. And then as soon as we're like, oh, dude, sorry, we had no, he's like, all right, cool. Like, what the hell, man? But that's what I'm saying. He didn't say, hey, this is Jens. Can I get a ride? He was like, hey, guys, can I get a ride? I'm like, nope, sorry, dude. Can't do it. No room.
Yeah. Miletich beats Kenichi Yamamoto, super stud out of Japan.
Yep.
Robbie Lawler makes his debut, a 4-man tournament at Extreme Challenge.
Oh, God, yeah. That was a
You were there for that as well.
yeah. Yeah, Robbie was he was something special even back then. He would just maul people. Like guys that were
you knew he was
his
you knew he was special immediately.
Oh yeah. Like guys that were his level, so to speak, were not his level. He's like an 18-year-old kid that, or maybe even younger, just a young kid that wrestled in high school, did some taekwondo as a little kid, and was just a scrappy kid. And then we'd watch him fight, and he would literally demolish people. You know, he's a high school wrestler that did some taekwondo and likes to fight. You put him in there with another high school wrestler that did some taekwondo that likes to fight, Robbie would mop the floor with him like that guy was a third grader. Like this is something's not right, you know. So yeah, I mean, we knew from early on. I mean, he would hit people and they would just die.
Like first couple times in practice, you guys knew immediately, huh?
Oh yeah. The problem was Robbie was always he was not a real hard worker back then. He was a kid. He was 18, 19 years old, and he'd come to the gym every now and then when he felt like it. He'd have a fight coming up and he'd show up 2 weeks before the fight and train a little bit. He was just a young kid. He just was mostly just doing it for fun.
That's a different kind of human being, man. Like he's a senior in high school, shows up over at MFS.
Yeah.
And you guys are like, holy shit. Like, he's a local, like that's a homegrown talent.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. And we're like, oh, this guy punches pretty hard. We should get him to come train with us. Hey, Robbie, you want to come train with us? And he's like, yeah, maybe. I'm going to go fishing this weekend. We'll see. You know, he just, again, just a kid that enjoyed doing it and didn't really think much beyond that. Because I'm a kid that likes doing this. It's fun.
UFC 31, Pat Miletich fights Carlos Newton. He loses by bulldog choke. If you look at that first round, it might be the most polished, well-rounded Pat Miletich you could ever see on video.
Yep.
He loses by bulldog choke to Newton. It was a little bitter pill to swallow.
Very. Yep. So I kind of remember that was, in the era in the gym right there, we were working through a lot of wrestling, and Pat was really trying to push his wrestling more. And that choke that we had just gone over that, because in wrestling, if you can spin out that way, right? If that guy's kind of got an arm over your neck, instead of an arm throw, you just duck out kind of, and there's some merit to that. And then he just picked the wrong time to try it. I'm sure it was just, this is kind of, top of his mind. We've been training it. He was thinking about it. Carlos put his arm in that position. Pat thought, here it is. I got it. And Carlos just caught him. And because you can see Pat tries to turn and kind of duck out the back door and gets caught. Doesn't make it.
In his last 6 fights, Carlos Newton's 5-1, with his only loss being to Dave Manet in Kuwait. That Kuwaiti tournament where Dave won a fake gold belt.
Yeah. Dave's another one, man. That guy's a monster. That's another people that people don't.
Should be in the UFC Hall of Fame.
Yep, absolutely. That guy was a stud.
Yeah, first 185 pound. Anybody that wins the belt the first time for the division, how they started off, automatic entry into the UFC. Whether you like them or not does not matter. Holds no bearing. They started that title. And Dave Monet falls into that category.
Yep, I agree. Dave Monet's incredibly good.
Pat Miletich goes on to beat Shoney Carter. Jens Pulver makes his UFC return against Dennis Hallman. Dennis Hallman submitted Matt Hughes 2 times. Jens Pulver beats him by decision.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of, I remember talking to Jens right around this time where he's like, yeah, I beat him. You know, it was kind of a badge of honor for him.
Have you heard the story about when Matt fights Hallman the first time and loses?
I don't know.
They fight in a small, it was an 8-man tournament. They fight, and I believe they fought in the first round.
His Extreme Challenge.
Yeah. And so Matt was really raw. He didn't know.
It was in Wisconsin. It was up northern Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, yep.
Yeah.
So Matt is really raw, and he's just a big, strong ox of a wrestler. And back then, his style basically consisted of pick you up, throw you on the ground, grab you by your neck, and just punch you until you're done. He didn't really have any skill beyond wrestling and just brute strength. And Dennis Hallman was a very skilled fighter at that time. He was good. So Matt shoots in. Dennis puts him in a guillotine, puts him completely to sleep. And as he's waking up, Matt's laying there flat on his back. And Todd Fredrickson, he was the ref. He tells me this story. He wakes him up and he looks at Matt. And he goes, do you know what happened? And Matt kind of looks around and goes, I figure I lost, because he's laying on the ground. And Todd goes, yep, you got caught in the guillotine. You went to sleep. And Matt, without missing a beat, looks at him and goes, yeah, I guess I better work on that. That was just his perspective. Like, yep, I guess I better work on that.
I'd say, like, the type of attitude that you guys had, you guys were also alpha, all of you. But even in your losses, you guys, I mean, there was a lot of humility, like, from your side, like the Miletich side. It wasn't just fuck you, we're here to beat your ass. Like, there was genuine humility handshakes at the end.
I think so. I mean, I always tried to do that. And I think a lot of guys in Iowa felt the same way. But again, I think it kind of came back to, and again, this is just my perception. Maybe the other guys would disagree, but I don't know that I certainly never looked at it like, excuse me, like we are, a world, one of the top world ranked fighting gyms, and we are fighting with other people. It was just, this is just like a sport that we're doing. We're just fighting. It's fun. Let's go fight.
Prior to this,
win most of the time. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I made a mistake. February 23rd, 2001, Jens wins the UFC title at 30 against Calluno. And like the one thing that I've always kind of taken away from Jens's career was when he decided to leave because they wouldn't match what BJ was making.
Right.
It almost seemed like so personal on Dana's side. Like, it was like he went after Jens with the vitriol to where he was held out of the UFC for many, many years, when obviously he should have been in there. And I just kept thinking to me, why? And I think the obvious, like, low-hanging fruit answer is, well, when Zuffa bought the UFC, their first champion that they ever strapped was Jens Pulver.
Yeah. Well, and he was managed by Monte. And Monte was, I mean, Monte's a great guy, and he's a very good friend, but he's also a pretty harsh negotiator. And as a manager, he would do what was best for his fighters. And that means he was very often at odds with Dana and the UFC. It was an adversarial relationship always with them, because Monte's the manager and Dana's the promoter. So they were never friends. And sometimes it got a little pissy because, Monte would do stuff that it wasn't underhanded. It was completely legal and fair. But you know how it is, man. In business scenarios, you're gonna push the boundaries, and you're gonna do shit to win for your side.
Yeah. Yeah. When that lawsuit came with the fighters union, they have tens of thousands of text messages and emails from managers that I don't think that they're able to release based on that it's part of the judgment.
Right.
But I've talked to some people that have read them, and they said it's just mind blowing. And when we interviewed Monte Cox, he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I gave him my emails." It was like out of all of the managers that had to forward their emails for this lawsuit, Monty's the only guy going, "Oh yeah, I forwarded all my emails. They got everything. They can read all of my communication." To where all the other managers are just like very tight-lipped.
Sure. Well, maybe they're just trying to protect themselves, and Monty at this point just doesn't care. Is it,
where Monty's got nothing to hide.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Monty was always honest, but he would get the fights that he wanted to fight. Like Matt Hughes is a monster. He's been in the UFC a bunch of times. He's won their title back when they didn't really care about people fighting. And now Matt Hughes is fighting on a local card on a fight that Monty's promoting. Well, this is legitimately the world champion. Do you think Monty's going to find a local guy that wants to fight him? No. He would, because he'd say, "Look, you're fighting Matt Hughes. I'm going to be honest with you. You're probably not going to win this fight. But if you can go out there and put on a good showing and give people a chance to show what you're made of, I'll give you another fight down the road against a better matched opponent, and the world will get to see what you're capable of." And guys are like, "You know what? Cool. He's honest with me. He's telling me I'm not going to win. I'm probably going to lose this fight, but it's a good opportunity for me." And then Monty would pay him fairly. And
it's the truth. I mean, what he told him was the truth.
It's the truth. I think that's why Monty was so respected in the sport, because he wouldn't say, "Oh yeah, I think you can beat Matt." He's like, "Look, man, you're not going to win this fight. I don't think you're going to win, but a good showing will still do well for you in your career."
I agree. And the other managers being very tight-lipped. I can tell you what I was told was this manager intentionally sold this guy out and even offered the guy because he had this injury or that injury so he could get another guy either in through the door or a title fight.
Yep. Guys who do that all the time.
Managers. Those are guys that are you're paying.
Yep.
They're doing that to you. That's not money. I think that's another reason why they disliked him so much.
Yep. Well, and at one point he had 4 of the 5 champions, and he kind of had some leverage, like if Monty's got 4 of your 5 champions and he goes, "Hey guys, I want you to use this guy," he would never say, "Use him or I'll pull my champions." But the leverage is implied, right? If you go, "Look, I really want this guy to get a fight, please put him on a card." And they would. Oh. And, Monty always suggested tough guys. It's not like he was asking for, CM Punk to get in the UFC. All the guys that he put in back there were good.
Jeremy, when CM Punk, this is like a year and a half ago, I bought 15 UFC CM Punk t-shirts, and I think I spent $35 on it. I gave him away as gifts. It was like my Christmas gift that year. Here's your CM Punk UFC shirt, your kit, your UFC kit.
Yes.
Jens Pulver, when he fought BJ Penn at UFC 35, he was a heavy underdog.
Yeah.
Did you know he was going to win that fight?
I didn't really look at it that way. I mean, I knew this was a very tough fight, but I had faith that Jens could win. I don't know if I would say I knew he was going to win, but yeah, I mean, he fought well, and BJ ran into some opposition, and it kind of hurt him mentally, and it kind of gave Jens the edge, and then the scales tipped in his favor and just ran with it.
The cardio.
Yep. BJ had never really been pushed before at that point. In a fight, and I think maybe he was a little overconfident, and then, and again, the cardio, you start getting, what do they say? Fatigue makes cowards of us all. So that's the way it goes.
Matt Hughes fought Carlos Newton. They kind of forced Pat to go up to 185 in order to slide Matt in at 170. You were the person that got to tell Matt that he won the world title after he was unconscious.
Yeah. Well, that's what they say. Like he wasn't unconscious.
He was.
Yeah, I mean, if there are degrees of consciousness, he was at 98. Right? He was about as close to unconscious as you can be and still be coherent and in control of your body. Barely.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was awake, but just barely.
There was in terms of UFC's incredible, holy shit, incredible moments. That will never leave the top 5.
Oh yeah, that was
ever.
Definitely.
So at UFC 36, Matt Hughes was originally slated to fight Anderson Silva, and he wound up with Hayato Sakurai, another badass judo player.
Yep.
Yeah, he wins by KO.
Yeah. Well, that was one, that was where he was really training a lot and he was really coming along. His jujitsu and striking and everything was really coming along. And at that point, we knew like Sakurai is just he's not big enough. He's not strong enough. He can't wrestle as well. And Matt's going to beat him,
The Japanese are terrible at cutting weight.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, too. They just generally don't cut weight. So, I mean, he was way smaller than Matt. And weight, Matt is just stronger than everybody.
At this time, was Matt catching up to Pat in the gym?
In his area, yes. In wrestling, certainly in grappling, he could hold his own and make Pat work. In striking, not at all. His striking was still pretty fundamental and still pretty, just kind of getting his feet wet and learning. But in the grappling areas, Matt was holding his own and making it hard for him just because his wrestling and his strength and his will and his unwillingness to quit it carried him through a lot.
Miletich fought Matt Lindland on the undercard. After he lost in the first round, he retired. For some reason, it just seemed like the UFC wanted Pat to stop fighting and only coach. Did you kind of get that feeling as well?
Yeah, the UFC never really liked Pat, I don't think, because he had a fairly conservative style.
But at this point, he was probably the most exciting Pat Miletich that we'd ever seen at this point.
But like him fighting he throw a couple of punches, drive to a clinch, conservatively take you down, and he'd be happy to sit in your guard and just pound you in the ribs until he won a decision. And he would certainly do more than that, but he was conservative. He wasn't going to take too many risks to get out of there. I saw him take plenty of fights at earlier fights where he'd take a guy down to half guard or side control and then work and finish him, but he wasn't going to push hard for it. He was going to be conservative and he was going to take the win as it presented him to him because he didn't really care if it was a boring fight. He wanted to win.
Robbie
UFC hated that. They wanted exciting fights.
Yeah, Robbie Lawler fought Aaron Riley in his UFC debut, UFC 37. In my opinion, I thought they kind of stole that fight from Hook and Shoot, but another Hall of Fame worthy fight. Yep. And Aaron Riley's got an amazing chin.
Oh yeah, if I remember correctly, Robbie broke his jaw in that fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought Robbie Lawler, Lytle, another phenomenal fight.
Yep. Yeah, that was a great fight too, man. I'd forgotten they actually even fought.
Yeah.
Good fight.
UFC 34, Matt Hughes fights Carlos Newton. Just so kind of put it in proper context, Matt Hughes is on a 7-fight winning streak right now, all of which are outside of the UFC.
Yeah. Yep. And I think I didn't if at one point, let me see here. That was their second fight, right? It was
a rematch. Yeah, UFC 34. Yeah. That was in London, I believe. United Kingdom.
Yeah. Yep. And I remember because I don't think I wasn't there for that fight. I forget what I was doing, but I wasn't there.
Yeah, that was the infamous incident with Tito Ortiz.
Lee Murray, yes. And Tito Ortiz, yes. What was that? That was 2002, July 13th. Why wasn't I there? Probably fighting somewhere.
Yeah, in a car with Travis Fulton. 13th. It was as if like they kept Pat out of the UFC intentionally, kind of sat Matt on a shelf for a little bit, and then would bring him back when Pat was complaining about trying, hey, you know what, if he's not fighting, let me get another one in.
Yeah.
Yes. Like the politics were so wild, and Joe Silva wasn't real ethical either.
Yeah.
Towards certain people.
Yeah. I think he maybe had a little bit of the, I don't know, like the intellectual small man syndrome. He was a smaller guy, but he didn't, I think he felt like if he wasn't being respected for his position and his ability, that he would hold that against people.
He would love to talk down to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be the big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt Hughes beats Gil Castillo at UFC 40. Then Tim Sylvia, February 28, 2003, UFC 41. Tim Sylvia beats Ricco Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Ricco Rodriguez by this time was already a world champion and then cut by the UFC at the age of 25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why that was. I don't know why. What was the story behind them cutting him?
You know what, dude? I think there was a lot of. I've heard some Ricco Rodriguez stories that are absolutely shocking. And I think it was more the outside of the ring antics. He was kind of doing John Jones stuff before John Jones existed.
Yeah, that'll do
And,
it. They don't like that.
and at the age of 25, he's cut and he never gets his way back. Like he's got like 75 fights. Never made it back to the UFC. He would go on 15, 16 fight win streaks. They still wouldn't take him back.
Yep.
Fucking wild. Matt Hughes, Sean Sherk, that's when they started making you guys fight training partners.
Yeah. Well, so that was a bit of an anomaly because Sean Sherk trained with Greg Nelson up in Minnesota and with Dave Monet and those guys. So they were both managed by Monty, and they didn't really want to fight each other because I don't know how much they trained together, but they were friendly. We'd see each other at fights. We're same management group, just a friendly, kind of like a sister gym kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't like you know, having Monty controlling so many talented fighters. So they wanted one of them to be kind of knocked off the rankings, so to speak. So they kind of forced that fight. And if I remember correctly, Sean Sherk called Monty and said, "Look, I don't, you're a great manager. I want to stay with you, but I really want to fight for the title. So, like, I'm gonna have to go with a different manager because I think there was some weirdness about you couldn't have two fighters managed by the same guy fighting each other."
What I think happened was they kept refusing Sherk. And then for him to even get into the UFC, a different management company sent his contract. And they're like, yep, the only way you get here is if you sign that with this management. Yeah.
That sounds right. That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Did you know Tim Sylvia when he first walked through the doors at MFS? Did you think that he was world champion, like caliber talent?
Nope, not even close. That guy couldn't even jump rope. He literally could not get over the rope one time. We would make him put both handles of the rope in one hand and just spin it beside him and hop because he couldn't jump over the rope. He didn't have the coordination to get over the rope one time.
Like, where does a guy like that, who's clearly, should probably choose a different career?
Yep.
Like the will, determination, love, like
I mean, that guy, I don't know, but I'm guessing that he grew up picked on, I'm like, just because you're big doesn't mean you're not picked on. Sometimes being big makes you the outcast and you get picked on even more. But yeah, he was not treated well growing up. And I think, when he got bigger and he started fighting, he's like, I'm going to show everybody that I'm not worthless. And he just worked his ass off. So yeah, he was not coordinated. He was not talented. I did not think he was going to be anything special. But he just kept working and kept working and kept working and would not take no for an answer, would not quit.
When he beat Ricco Rodriguez, did it surprise you?
No. I mean, at that point I had trained with him a lot. I knew how hard he worked, and no, I figured he'd beat Ricco. Because he's a talented guy, but he's also very arrogant. And I figured that he would try to strike with Tim because nobody respects Tim. Everybody's like, oh, Tim was only champion because he fought when the heavyweights all sucked. Well, no, he beat some talented guys.
Dude, beat Jeff Monson.
Yep. So, but yeah, so I mean, I knew how good he was.
Beats Gan McGee, gets stripped of the title. I believe whatever issues he had with that drug test, whatever his purse was, he spent 10 times it to prove that it was a tainted supplement and that he was actually innocent.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like the UFC really had a lot of care whether he was innocent or not. It was
not really, because they didn't like him either because he didn't have the look. He didn't have that chiseled Adonis look. He was just a good fighter.
I look at it this way. Whenever you've got a fight organization, the life center of that organization is your heavyweight belt. When the heavyweight belt is talked about and like, oh my gosh, the rest of the weight classes benefit.
Yeah.
And
everybody loves the heavyweights. Big knockouts.
How can you not?
Yeah.
Gan McGee beats Gan McGee by KO. Matt Hughes beats Frank Trigg. Matt Hughes loses to BJ Penn. It's just something with Jens Pulver and what he can do. And
Yep.
like, that's the one thing. If I had to pick something in Matt Hughes' head, it's don't fight somebody Jens Pulver beat.
Yeah, I never noticed that before, but yeah, maybe there's some kind of curse there. But I mean, that's, BJ was really, really good, and Matt was good then. He was really starting to learn, but his groundwork was not ready for a fighter the quality, the caliber of BJ Penn. And so when BJ hit hard too, and Matt was never great at taking shots. He didn't like to get hit. It was kind of sad to see him, for me at least, see him trying to become more of a striker later in his career, because I knew from the beginning, man, he never, he wasn't like a weakling or a sissy, but he didn't like to get hit.
He's not a boxer. He's a wrestler.
Yeah.
Why do wrestlers fall in love with striking?
I don't know.
It's like the rapper that wants to play basketball and the basketball
Yep.
player that wants to be a rapper.
Yep.
It's like striking and wrestling have got that same weird type
Yeah.
of relationship.
So BJ hits hard, and when he clipped Matt, I don't know if it hurt him as much as it scared him. And he goes for a takedown, and BJ's a hell of an athlete and a good wrestler, caught him out of position, caught that underhook, spun him around. And again, Matt was good on the ground. He was training, but he wasn't ready for somebody like BJ. BJ was able to just get through his guard, hit him a couple of more times. Matt kind of panicked and gives up his back because he's a wrestler by nature. That's somebody like BJ.
I would say Mark Coleman and Matt Hughes are one-trick ponies, but damn, is that a hell of a trick.
Yeah, a hard trick to get past.
Randleman falls in that category too. But I tell you, like you said, it's a hard trick to get past. Yep. Sylvia fights Frank Mir. You're in his corner. Mir breaks Tim's arm, and Tim protests, pretending that it's not broken. I think this is Herb Dean's UFC debut.
Yeah, I remember watching that fight over and over and over in the arena, watching it on the big screen, going, look at his fucking elbow. His elbow was past the cup. Why did he stop that fight? That was a bad stoppage. They watched it like 6 or 7 times in a row. And then I forget who was with me. One of the other guys in the corner goes, oh, no. Look at his forearm. And we saw that pop, and it was like, oh, shit. Yep, his arm's broken. Okay, dude, good job, Herb. You caught that when nobody else did.
Dude, Herb Dean goes from King of the Cage to the UFC. This is one of his first few fights. The entire audience and corners and Tim Sylvia are turned on him. And Herb, to his credit, at this point, this is when I knew Herb Dean was special. He stood his ground. Nope. I know what I saw. I'm right. And then he did a couple replays, and the audience went from booing to
And like the whole time I wasn't watching his forearm. I was looking 6 inches away at his elbow, going, his elbow never went straight. His elbow never got hyperextended. And then I watched his forearm and watched that big bubble pop up at his forearm. Like, oh, yep, that's broken.
Dude, Frank Mir, in terms of heavyweights, I don't think anybody's taken more limbs than him. He's got Nogueira, and I think he's got a third person.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Hughes fights GSP, wins by armbar. Sylvia fights Arlovski, loses by Achilles lock, 47 seconds. Man, dude.
That was another one. Like, Tim was okay at grappling, but, not a submission guy, not a guard work guy. So when Arlovski caught him with that punch, and, Tim was ready to defend himself from getting hit, but then Arlovski jumped on that heel hook or that footlock.
Tim Sylvia gets cut from the UFC after losing a world title to Arlovski.
Right.
Beats Mike Black, Trey Telligman in the UFC, Osorio Silva in the UFC, gets a rematch with Arlovski, wins by KO.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show you that, like, number one, it wasn't a fluke that Tim got beat by ankle lock, but it shows that, heavyweights, anybody can win. And if you give Tim a chance to punch somebody, he might put him to sleep.
UFC in love with Arlovski gives him an immediate rematch at UFC 61.
Oh, yeah, they really wanted Arlovski to be the title holder.
Yeah.
He's got the look. He's chiseled, Adonis-looking guy going through different looks, long hair, fully shaved body, looking real GQ.
I tell you, he looked like that 80s rocker.
Yeah.
And then like I think he probably got a girlfriend or
Like
something.
highlights in his hair and everything. Yeah. He was going all in on the look, and that's what the UFC wanted. They wanted him to be the champ.
Yeah. He was like a European vampire. It was weird. It was weird.
Yes, yes.
I think when he shaved his traps is when maybe
Yes.
like his power went out.
Yep.
His power left him.
Yeah, you got to be a big furry Wookiee if you're going to be a good fighter. You can't shave. Except your head.
No.
You're allowed to shave your head and still be tough.
Rematch with Hughes in BJ Penn. Matt wins it by KO in the third round. Tim Sylvia beats Jeff Monson. At the same time, Matt Hughes loses to GSP. You guys went 1-1 that night in world title fights. Dude, you guys just had so many titles. Like at any point, you're still not kind of dialed into going, holy shit, dude, this is a fucking run.
Not me. I mean, again, maybe some of the other guys did, but I just never looked at it that way. For me, it was always just, these are my buddies. They're doing well. We're having fun. Let's go train and let's go have a pizza after practice. That's it. It's just.
Tim Sylvia loses to Randy Couture, lost the UFC title again. Fuck, dude. Tim Sylvia, Antonio Nogueira, he lost by guillotine. It was for the interim title. Yeah, and then Sylvia fought Fedor. Oh,
Yeah.
dude.
See, that was the kind of thing, another good example of Monty being a great manager. Fedor is a monster. Excuse me. He's crushing everybody. They were trying to put together like an M1 UFC co-promotion thing. The UFC wasn't having it, so Fedor's kind of just bouncing around trying to find somewhere to fight. Monty hooks him up a fight with Tim, and I probably shouldn't say this. It's not my place to put money out there, but
Tim made a lot of money. Tim made
Monty
a lot of money.
got a large portion of Tim's fight purse as show money, and then a very small win bonus.
You know what, man? I'll say this. It might not be your position to put it out there, but when you're looking at a fighter and he's got bills and he can buy a plot of land, a little piece of house on it, and never have to worry again.
Yep.
Fuck it.
Yep. And that was the thing, like, okay, you're fighting a guy that has not lost a fight in like 9 years, crushing everybody. We're going to get you 90% of your fight purse to show, and 10% if you happen to win, we'll get you a little bonus. But we're getting the majority of your money up front just to step in the ring with that guy.
You rode with Don Frye, and he referred to your session as playing pool with a rope.
Yes, Don had a way with words.
How would you describe your session with Don?
I don't know that we ever actually wrestled. I remember him saying that when he was doing commentary for my fight with Vernon White. I fought Vernon for the title in King of the Cage, and Don was one of the commentators. So he was. I remember he was. So I've had, excuse me, I'm getting a dry throat here. So I've always had a pretty easy time to separate myself from fighting. Like I talk with people outside of the ring all the time. It's not that. So I'm talking to Don. He's 3 feet away from me, and he's like, "Hey, it's Jeremy," and I'm like, "Hey, Don, how are you?" I was like, I got Vernon pressed against the cage, trying to take him down, and he's like, "Yeah, that guy Jeremy, man, he's a weird one. He's like shooting pool with a rope."
Huh? You trained with John Lober as well.
He did.
You did.
No, I never trained with Lober.
You know what? I got a thing here that you trained with John Lober. Who would you say? Jesse Jones as well. You trained with Jesse Jones?
Yeah. I trained him from pretty much the beginning of his career until I moved to Iowa.
That's wild. What about Rulon Gardner?
I trained with him a little bit actually here once I moved out to Utah here, and I had a gym. He came, he was just up north a little bit. I think he was Idaho somewhere. I can't remember exactly where he's from, but yeah, because he was good friends with Brandon Ruiz, who's a local wrestler that's just a monster. And so Rulon Gardner came and trained with us a couple of times.
Were you surprised that he just was like a one and done fighter?
Yeah. I think maybe he just wanted to try it and just didn't, like fighting doesn't catch for everybody. You look at a guy like Rulon or some of these other guys, you're like, dude, you could do so much in this sport if you wanted to do it. and then they fight once and they're like, man, it's not for me. You know, just because you happen to be good at something doesn't mean you have that fire for it. And just sometimes just people just don't care, even if they could be good at it, you know.
You got called up by BJ Penn too.
I didn't know.
Did you get called up by BJ Penn after he beat Matt Hughes?
BJ and I have always got along. We trained together a fair bit
No?
throughout the time. Yeah, I know. BJ's always been a cool guy.
Did you choke out old school promoter Chad Mason?
Yes.
Bet, trick,
No.
joke?
No. He and I were friends. Like, I'm actually the one that got him into the sport. He, he's got a knack for talk. And so he, being a promoter was something where he really excelled. But yeah, I mean, I was with him at a lot of his fights, and just he would do a lot of like the local weekly bar fight kind of fights where just get some people in there, kind of a tough man kind of vibe. And I can't remember exactly what it was. I want to say it was maybe somebody's birthday or something. So yeah, we're just having fun. I just choked him unconscious in a bar. Yeah, it wasn't anything bad.
Well, we're talking about the Miletich Fighting Systems champions. How would you describe that era?
I don't really know. I mean, I guess in what terms, again, for me, that was just a great time. It was like summer vacation, but it lasted for like many years. It was just training and going to the gym and hanging out with my friends and fighting and traveling the world. And, just,
I hear you're on airplanes going all over the world.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I went through like two and a half passports. They added more pages to my passport and I still used it up and had to get a new one. But yeah, it was just a good time. I never really looked at it and said, man, I'm a professional fighter. I never looked at myself as a professional fighter. I'm just like, I don't know what I am. I never categorized myself. I just love training. I'd go to the gym and train 3 or 4 hours in the morning. We'd go lift, we'd go roll, we'd go spar, whatever, go home in the afternoon and play video games for a few hours and then go back to the gym at night and go roll and train and spar and have fun and just do that every day until it's time to go to a fight. I mean, I never really looked at it like I'm an athlete training for a fight. I was just going to the gym and hanging out with my buddies and having fun. It just happened to be that what we did for fun was fighting.
In terms of accomplishments of teams here in the United States, you'd be hard pressed to find another team that's accomplished that much at the same time. Yeah. Like there's gym owners and then there's big game hunters. There's big game hunters that bring those guys in and they got multiple people with titles and stuff like that, but not all at the same time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think that granted the era, the time frame, everybody's pretty new, everybody was still growing, but I think that's something that actually does deserve some recognition because when people would come and train with us, they would get good. Sometimes the guys would be a decent wrestler, decent boxer. Laverne Clark trained with us for a while. He had a decent knack for it, had a few fights early in the UFC. But guys would come to start training with us with next to no skill, and then they would get really, really good and they would do something with their career. Now you see guys like, I'm a millionaire, I want a gym, I'm going to open a gym and I'm going to collect 20 good fighters and now say that I have a good gym. Well, I guess technically you do, but you didn't do anything to build those fighters. It's just, it's not the same.
So they're also at an incredible advantage because there's a UFC every week.
Yeah, absolutely. So now everybody wants to fight. Everybody thinks they're going to be the next Conor McGregor.
It was 4 or 5 times a year when you were there, and it was such a huge deal because it was a sport we loved. Yeah. And, you're putting miles on your car on the weekends to watch it regionally, and then, buying the pay-per-views every other month.
Yep. Yeah, but like I said, it was just going to the gym and training with my buddies, and it just like I'm fortunate enough that I don't have to get a job.
All right, this is my project for you. You're gonna have to come up with like a cool saying or statement in regards to the Miletich Fighting System's years. That can be put on a billboard somewhere. You know what I mean? Like you gotta just playing video games, hanging out with my buddies, flying all over the world.
Well, like I was saying before, like the best way to the best way I think to relate this is that scene from that movie Step Brothers. when they're looking at each other and they realize they have a lot in common. They're like, did we just become best friends? And the guy goes, yup. He goes, do you want to go do karate in the garage? That's it. Like somebody would come to the gym, we'd beat each other up for a little bit and be like, holy cow, you're a cool guy. Did we just become best friends? Like, do you want to go wrestle? And that's it. That's all it was. It was just guys that enjoyed doing this. We were just wrestling with each other, just beating each other up, just having a good time. And then every once in a while, somebody would go out somewhere for a weekend and go fight, and they'd probably win. But if they didn't, we didn't. It wasn't that, I don't want to say losing didn't matter, but we're like, cool, whatever. Come back to the gym. We'll start training again. So-and-so's got to fight next weekend. We're all just training hard and having fun. That's all it was.
Okay, here, I got a couple of things for you. Jens Pulver, Matt Hughes, Spencer Fisher, those guys refereed on the weekends.
Yep.
Granted, you fought a lot.
Yep.
Why weren't you ever like one of Monty's rotating referees of Miletich fighters?
Honestly, I think it's just because I was always fighting somewhere. I would fight almost every weekend, and some of the other guys didn't fight as often.
I think that's something you would have excelled at, to be honest with you.
I do. I love reffing. It's a great time. It's the best seat in the house. I love it. So if there's anybody out there that wants me to ref a fight, I'd love to come out and ref fights for you. But yeah, I love it. It's a good time.
When did you know it was time for you to leave?
Leave Iowa?
Yeah.
Again, it was just, man, my whole life now, you make me state it like this. It makes me seem like my whole life is just like a reckless roll of the dice. But that really kind of what it was. So Monty was managing Jennifer Howe. She was, one of the early female pioneers of the sport. She was crushing everybody. And she would come out to Iowa and train with us from time to time. She had her own group of people in Utah.
So Jennifer Howe, you can either your team Tara LaRosa or your team Jennifer Howe in arguing of who the actual first women's world champion was.
Well, considering Jen knocked her out, I would say it's Jen.
but then she beat Roxanne Modafferi that beat Jen. It's like there's a weird math equation there. But if you were to bring it back, Jen Howe, right?
Yeah,
okay, that's fair.
So.
Yeah,
so
that's
Jen
your
would come
argument.
out to Iowa and trained with us a lot, and her and I hit it off, and we ended up developing a relationship. And it was kind of a long distance relationship for a while because she was in Utah and I was in Iowa. And then I just decided, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to move out to Utah. So I packed up my stuff and moved.
Was there any pre-planning, or you telling Pat just?
No,
hey,
I planned it all in about. So again, man, this is making me look like such just a head case. So I was renting a house in Iowa. I was just living alone, and I decided I didn't want a long distance relationship anymore. So in the span of about 2 weeks, I just decided to move. And so I continued paying rent on my house in Iowa. I packed my truck and my car and got a little U-Haul to tow behind it, to bring as much as I could, and drove out to Utah. And then I went back 3 months later with Jen, and we packed up my house and got like one of those big freighter trucks to ship all my stuff out to Utah. I was just like, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to Utah.
Was there any pushback from the guys in the gym? Any question?
They were like, cool. Hope you're happy. And because they knew, I was seeing Jen, and I was like, look, this is,
getting serious.
Yeah, it's getting serious. I'm going to Utah. They're like, all right, cool. Good luck, man. And then a lot of them would come out and train with me, because I came out to Utah and I was training with the Walt Bayless guys, because that's where Jen was training. So I trained at their gym with them for about a year. And I'd have a lot of the Iowa guys come out and train with me. And Rich Franklin came out and trained with us.
Joe Riggs. Joe
Riggs. And then I opened my own gym. And then, the guys from Iowa would still come out. Tim would come out and train, and Matt would come out and train. And, so.
It's like really unique too. Did you know there's only 350 Fight Club members out of Canada? John Alessio, who you fought and trained with, Joe Dorkson, who you trained with, and Dennis Kang. Yeah, there's only 350 Fight Club members for MMA in Canada.
Wow. Huh.
And there'll never be another one.
Yeah.
Without the regulations and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Joe Dirksen, man, I haven't heard that name in a long time. He's
I got to get him on.
So many good stories.
I got to get him on.
Dude. Oh, hell yeah. So many stories. Such a good guy. He was another guy, he just was a guy that loved to fight, and
nice guy.
Such a nice guy. And he honestly, I would say he is the epitome of what a fighter. I'm not quite sure how to phrase this. I don't want to call him a part-time fighter, but somebody that views views fighting as part of their life, but not the whole thing. So he would work a hard day job. I want to say he did construction, something like out in the heat, swinging a sledgehammer, breaking concrete. And he was still doing that when he had like 4 or 5 fights in the UFC. And then he was like, hey, looks like I'm making enough money. I guess I'll go ahead and quit this job and become a full-time fighter. And he did that for quite a few years, and he had a lot of success. And then when it was time to stop fighting, he's like, cool, I did that. That was fun. I'm going to go back and get a job again. I'm going to get married and have kids. And now he is as happy as you could imagine. Like, had a time where he was a professional fighter, traveling the world, doing great things, loving it. When that chapter was over, he's like, now I'm happy in this chapter. I'm working a job with, wife and kids. That's just, it's amazing to me that he just,
Stepped away
wherever
from the
he
game.
was at in life, he was happy with that position in life. So cool.
The wild thing is, like, he stepped away from the game. Guys like yourself, Dorkson, guys with 60, 70 fights plus, obviously, in your case, they tend to be married to the game. Like, they're never, ever leaving.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he had no issue doing it. John Alessio is a cop now in Vegas, I hear.
I saw that, yeah. This was a couple years ago. I think I connected with him on Facebook again. But yeah, I saw that he was a sheriff or something like that. Again, same thing. Like, once fighting's over, time to move on to do something else, and you don't look back and you just move on. I think that's so cool. Because I know there's a lot of guys, and not just this sport, but boxing or football, even, where guys just, they can't let go of it, and they're just like, it ruins their life because they can't
Jeremy,
move on to another chapter.
Jeremy, look at people's social media where it's like, man, you haven't fought in 20 years and you're still posting your UFC pictures.
Right.
It's like, come on, bro. Like, what's happened after? What's going on since?
I agree.
Like, it's cool. It's great.
Yeah, but right, yeah, like live the life you're living today. It's
What's now?
Yeah, so guys that can actually, kind of turn the page. I don't really like that phrase, but the guys that can do that, and then they do, and they move on with their life, and they're still happy. I'm so happy for guys that can do that. It's just such a positive mindset, a positive place to be mentally, to be like, look, I did that when I was younger. I had a great time. Now I'm older, and now I'm doing this, and I'm just as happy as I was when I was doing that, but now I'm doing this. So cool. I love that.
Jeremy Horn, Miletich Fighting Systems, championship years. Dude, always a pleasure. Man, Salt Lake City, and I think we're coming back first quarter of the year for BKFC. I look forward to seeing you again. Appreciate
Looking forward to it, definitely. Well, let's get together and go have dinner or something this time.
You know what, dude?
Awesome.
I would like that, actually.
Yeah,
rather than just a quick picture.
For sure, yeah. Give me a shout. We'll get together.
100%. Thanks, Jeremy.
See you, man.
Buddy. Yep. Josh, in our little group text, you made an interesting statement about Mr. Horn.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just in my little autistic nerding out and looking at different people's records in the databases, I determined that Jeremy Horn is one of about maybe 5 guys who have wins recorded in 4 different decades. So 1996 to 2020, the man has wins. Along some others on that list are Alexei Olenek, Carol Uno, and some others, I think Yuki Kondo, and some that I'm not remembering right now. But take that knowledge and flourish.
Oh, that is a wild statistic.
Yeah. And checking on the other guys too. Like, that's not a Google search.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not a Google search.
Well, Jeremy Horn has so many fights that I noticed that he has the ability to sort of look at his own record to determine where he was or what he was doing during a certain time of year.
Dear diary, where was I? Yeah.
The thing about Horn, to have that many fights and that many wins, you'd expect like, oh, that must be a phenomenal athlete. But if you look at the God-given attributes that Horn has, he's tall, he has a good chin. But that's about the only God-given gifts he's got.
Flexibility.
He wasn't super fast, and by all accounts, he wasn't super strong, but he just outthought so many opponents. He was way ahead of his time.
And not afraid. Definitely not scared.
Yeah.
Did he fuck Gilbert Yvel?
That's nuts.
Like, fuck that. No.
Accepting the Frank Shamrock fight like it's no big deal at all. It's just another fight to him. It's a special kind of guy.
The one thing that,
And he's the only person who ever beat Chuck Liddell by a submission.
That is true. That is true. And when Chuck was on his championship run, he was 12-1. Jeremy Horn was that one.
Yep.
so I highly suggest at some point people in their life talk to a jiu-jitsu coach that's got a team that competes and ask them how the kids tournament went. And usually the next 15 minutes is them talking about coaches screaming their heads off, overly celebrating, like obnoxiously like walking around because some 7-year-old won a decision against, a rival champ.
Yep.
And like that type of attitude for the kids portion of the jiu-jitsu tournament, you can only imagine how that translates to adults in mixed martial arts. And then you put in world title fights. As nonchalant as Jeremy Horn was with Frank Shamrock going, yeah, I'll take that fight.
Right.
He was that exact same way with world titles.
Yeah. He had a different kind of mentality.
Like in terms of, let me pull up the name right here. In terms of cornering people in title fights, Marcelo Cristiano, who was the shoot box corner, him and Mike Brown or Marcelo. It's kind of hard. Well, Mike Brown, because it's obviously, he's got a travel gym right now. But like, if you look at like the time period, like of where Jeremy Horn had the Miletich guys and just use any block of like, we'll call it 5 years. Have you cornered as many world title fights around that period, like that 5-year block? He'd be hard pressed to find somebody.
True. And these days, like you said, there's a fight card every week. It wasn't like that.
No.
There was 5 in a year, and Jeremy Horn was cornering someone for every one of them.
Fucking nuts.
I didn't know he was in Mark Coleman's corner during his
me neither.
Pride Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Especially along with Gary Goodridge. Like, could you imagine 2 more different people
for sure
to have in your corner?
No. Dude, Ebenezer Braga.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't speak good English, man.
That's too bad. He'd be a good one.
He's been living in Fort Lauderdale for like a decade. Like,
what
the
why
fuck?
Why don't you just learn Portuguese?
Yeah.
Mike?
So there's this.
You already speak Spanish.
Yeah, there's this Portuguese. There's this AI program that translates in real time, and I'm like, fuck, dude, we're getting Tadao. We're gonna talk about Hickson and what really took place in Brazil. We're getting Braga. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, climaxing, and then and then we look at the rates. It's like $950 for 10 hours of like real time translating. Like,
well,
fuck.
that price is going to drop. It's going to drop quick.
Yeah.
Fuck. I want that, dude.
Oh, hell yeah.
So, Joey, I think we're at BKFC in your neck of the woods. November, is it 22nd or 23rd?
It's the 23rd, Saturday, I think.
It's a Saturday.
Yeah.
Josh, when are we seeing each other next?
I don't know. What do you got coming up, Mark?
Dude, I think we're in Kansas City in April. Joey, too. Yeah. This guy came. We've never met up until this point.
Right.
We're in. I got a shitload of points. Like a shitload of points. Josh is like, dude, this guy helps me out a lot. What the fuck, dude? I got my wife every other weekend coming with me. I got plenty of frequent flyer miles. Josh, come on down, dude. Let's hang out.
Nice.
I get to the hotel. No double bedrooms.
Oh my God.
And no rollout like beds.
Okay. All right. So how'd it go?
Not even a couch.
Not even a couch. Dude, no rooms. I'm like sitting here like negotiating with the person behind the desk. I'm like, you don't understand. I don't really know this guy. Like, we hang out, we talk on the phone. Like, this is kind of like one of those bait and switch things. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't gonna look good. So I called Josh up and I'm like, Josh, I know you're at the airport right now. I got some really fucking weird news. Here's the situation. And Josh, there's like a dead silence. And I'm like, dude, I promise we're not going to bang. Yeah, that's all I can tell you. That's all I can tell you. I'm like, that's all I can tell you, dude. I'm sorry. So, I mean, I was a gentleman. I stayed on my side of the bet. That's all I'm going to say.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. You mean he didn't sleep on the floor?
Nah, come on, dude. I mean, it was blocking to get to the bathroom.
Gotcha.
Like dude, it was so.
So what you're saying is that BKFC rolls out the red carpet for you, and
Dude,
they take care of you.
It was a Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was like converted from, I don't know what it was before. It was like a prison right across the street.
I was
Okay.
going to say the view from the window of the hotel room was a jail.
Yeah, it was a jail. Like, it was just like, and then like the next show, I'm taking a picture of my double bed. Hey, because I get the upgrades. Hey, Josh. Yeah, wrong show, buddy.
I can honestly say that, the MMA detective Mark Davis is the only man I've ever shared a bed with.
Oh, no.
Wow. I thought me and Mike were pretty close, but you jumped way ahead of me in line, buddy.
Dude.
You're closer to him than I want to be.
I was like hugging the edge of the bed.
Oh my God, me too. And I'm like, I told my wife, I'm like, well, here's the situation, hon. And she's like, wait, what? And I'm like trying to explain it to her in like, from English and Spanish. She's Colombian. And I'm just like, in Spanish, it even sounds worse. I'm like, I don't know. I shouldn't have even said anything.
No. You can keep that one to yourself.
Turns out, I got to tell you something about me. I don't know. So, Josh, we're back in St. Louis in April, Kansas City in April. I think we should probably make that trek again. Just saying.
Call ahead and get the extra bed.
Yeah. Well, different hotel.
I'll go on one condition.
Right. Yeah. And then in July, dude, John Peretti is doing an art showing in Houston in July.
In July, yeah, that's right. He was telling me about that.
I think we all kind of do a little get together.
That would be cool.
And like I said, like I got a shitload of points. Let's just, as long as it's Southwest, the Southwest gets there, it'll be easy.
I got a feeling we're going to get all the way out there. We're going to find out his art is 10 grand a pop, and we're going to look like dicks for not buying one.
Yeah. And then there'll be one bed, in the room.
Exactly. He just had a serious surgery.
Yeah. Well, Tyson too. We can't forget Tyson. We'll make a nice little sandwich. Nice little sandwich there.
Manwich.
Yeah.
Peretti is recovering.
Go ahead.
Peretti is recovering from a knee surgery right now. So we're sending our best wishes out to our friend.
Absolutely.
Peretti is trying to get me to record him talking about like all things outside of mixed martial arts. And he dated a reptile woman at one point. He's been to like underground tunnels. When not Sandy Hook, but Columbine took place, he was there. Like Peretti, he was there. Like UFC, I think, was like within driving distance of it at that point. And whoever he was with, their son was actually in the building, and Peretti actually went there, was physically there, and heard the shots as they were ringing out.
That is a wild story.
Talks to dude. I tell you, he's got some theories. I'm going to say they're pretty wild.
Yes.
Like hurricanes are controlled, earthquakes, fake. Those are like underground bunkers being built. I mean, he's got some crazy shit in like the way he says it's with like such confidence where it's like, you're dumb for not believing it. Like dated a woman that was a reptilian.
Yeah. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I mean, in theory,
shapeshifter.
Yeah, shapeshifter. Yeah. Well, in theory, like here, let's go biblical to a certain degree. There's angels that were cast down from heaven that cannot leave here.
Fallen angels.
Angels. It's entirely possible. If you listen to like certain musicians and stuff like that, oftentimes you see them giving thanks to those fallen angels rather than traditional, non-traditional uppercase G found in churches or whatever around the country. So the other theory is that the Greys have been here and working deals and trading technology for, I don't know, different favors or sacrifices, adrenochrome, shit like that. Dude, stuff that I'm so far like not shouldn't
And-
talk about because I am so far away from really understanding it.
Right.
And
Other-
this is all John's theories.
Theories, like it's not a theory to him. Like you're
No, it's
dumb
not.
for not knowing.
That's true.
Yeah.
Assertions.
Yeah. And like when you look at like his library, he's a voracious reader.
Yeah.
Like there's some like Hitler also believed in a lot of this stuff as well. Like Hitler believed that
Mhm.
the belief is that guys like Hitler, Genghis Khan, some of the great conquerors, they all had help, and that the help that they had received was paid for by blood sacrifice.
Hmm. Well, that is dark.
Yeah. So there was like a Hitler historian on Rogan, almost about a month and a half ago, and they showed like the Olympics where Hitler's all methed out, like he's out of his mind tweaking. And the historian said, here's the issue. At this point, meth had not been invented yet. And Rogan's like, well, maybe he got like the sample.
Not true. Not true.
Really?
It was called Pervitin, and it was a tablet or a capsule that the Nazi soldiers had. It's one of the reasons that they were able to keep up a 3-day assault against the French, is that they were all methed up. Now,
But I think that the Olympics may have taken place prior.
they did, but I looked it up, and Pervitin actually was invented in the teens or 20s, but it wasn't a brand new drug. It was just a new way to use it.
Okay.
So,
That's fair. Yeah, he was definitely hopped up on something. Like he's not. I mean, can you imagine like this guy is in charge of a whole bunch of like murderers, and he's whacked out of his mind, doing his hands like he can't even sit still because he's so methed out. Like at some point, you got to go. Man, maybe we shouldn't be listening to this guy.
Well, in 36, they weren't murderers yet.
Yeah, that's true.
That happened a couple of years later. And by the way, they did kick our ass in that Olympics.
Yeah.
They had the highest medal count. We were number 2.
Yeah.
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 And then they took a bad turn.
Josh, July, Houston, Sean Purdy. I think maybe we do an LOP get together. It's like I said, it's in Houston. It's an art gallery. I think maybe we plug it, get some listeners there, some friends of the show, and kind of see what takes place. I think we owe it to John to all be there as much as he's done for the show.
That's true. I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
It would be a great joy to meet up with you guys in Houston and to, support John.
Excellent. Gentlemen, Miletich Fighting Systems years, please leave a review like on Apple, like the podcast app. Dude, we need them. I think we got 78 reviews.
If you leave a comment, we will read the comment, even if you're just calling one of us a homo.
That's true. That's true. As we had talked about earlier between Josh and I, which was consensual. I might add. Josh, I don't give a shit what you say.
It was consensual or platonic? I would go with platonic.
I would say consensual.
Okay, well.
You weren't there.
I wasn't there. You're right. Thank God.
But you're invited, Joey.
right.
Well, hey, just because you don't want to go to the party doesn't mean it's not nice to be invited. So I appreciate it, but I'm going to turn that down.
Okay. Gentlemen, we'll resume this conversation in the text group. Take care, guys.
See ya.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.